Welcome to episode number 31 of the Dugout Report. I am here with Brian Recca, recapping the 2024 MLB Draft, and I'm excited to hear his thoughts on it. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's a great time of year to get to talk some baseball, some draft. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is, what are your thoughts on the Phillies' overall picks?
So Phillies had a really interesting draft, actually. Their first pick was kid Dante Nori, a high schooler from Michigan. Um, you know, uh, Talking to some of my colleagues, and we weren't really expecting him to be a first round pick. I think he went 27th overall. We had him ranked in like the 140s. He's a great athlete. He's a little undersized, really strong though, really fast, good defender. Um, Really like the criticism for him. He's older for this draft class, which is a big factor for a lot of teams. He's going to be almost 20 years old, so he's playing against a lot of kids who are 18, 17, which gives him a pretty big advantage. And he's also kind of maxed out physically, so it's not like a ton of physical projection where you can see him growing or anything like that. But he's a good baseball player. He performed this summer. We actually had their second round pick, Griffin Burkhalter, another outfielder, high schooler from Virginia. We had him ranked higher. We had him ranked in like the 50 60 range. So I mean, I think getting both of those guys was you know pretty interesting. The order was a little weird, but
Mhm.
I don't think you have to see also how like the bonuses, how they make their money work and stuff, how all that plays out too. Uh, Overall, I think they had a pretty good draft. I mean, they 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 have a reputation at this point for taking a lot of like really big physical strong guys. A lot of them can run pretty well even though they're bigger, and I think they did that with this draft. And they accumulated a lot of guys who maybe have some contact issues, but guys who have some tools and who have performed. They also took a couple late guys who I found interesting. They took a pitcher, Marcus Morgan, out of Iowa in round 9. They took a lefty, Jared Spencer from Indiana State in the 14th round. And both of those guys we had on our top 300 list that we released. Both have really great stuff. Morgan's in upper 90s, so it's Spencer from the left side. Strike throwing has been a little bit of an issue for both guys and just general consistency. But, the Phillies had really good success with George Clausen last year. That's a guy who had a similar profile, like great stuff, great body, but hasn't performed. So who knows? I mean, one of those guys could end up being, this year's George Clausen. Again, I think they had a pretty solid draft. It's not like a fantastic draft class overall, not related to the Phillies, but I think they did what they're known for is they get really strong physical guys and see if you can coach them up.
Adding to the teams that I wanted to talk about, my other two teams, actually three, was the Blue Jays, Mets, and Yankees.
Sure. Anyone you want me to talk about first, or
Anyone.
okay? I'll start with I'll go with the two New York teams. I really liked what the Mets did. They took Carson Bench, outfielder from Oklahoma State. First round, they took Jonathan Santucci, a lefty out of Duke in the second round. And a lot of I think with a lot of their picks this year, what you saw is they took guys who are really good athletes, great physical traits, projectable, could, add some weight, get some more, power, or, add a little velocity, but they also had flaws and they needed to be coached up, if you will. I think like somebody like Benj, is you watch him at the plate and the swing is a little funky, it's a little weird. So I think that's a good opportunity though for a team like the Mets to really trust their player development staff and see if you can find a swing that works. And you might have a guy who has he's always making contact. He has power. He can run. Might play center field. Santucci has excellent slider. Is into the mid 90s from the left side. He started at Duke. Strikes have been a little scattered. So both of those guys, it's kind of like, can we coach them up? Can we have the tools in place, and we're trusting our player development staff to really fix the things that are flaws. I think they did this with Brandon Sproat, who they took. Was it last? They took him twice, actually, and now he's one of their best pitchers in the minors. And I think that it shows a lot of faith that things are changing for the Mets. And they brought on Steve Cohen, who's made a huge effort to invest in development and scouting and all that, and then also bringing in Stearns, who has phenomenal reputation, built a consistent winner with the Brewers. So I think that shows like a lot of faith that they trust what they're doing, and they're finding guys with tools, and that they are confident that they can turn them into something. A lot of their day two picks with later in the draft, they drafted Will Watson, Ryan Lambert. These guys are who are like into the upper 90s. Lambert's touched over 100 miles per hour in the draft league this summer. And again, I think there's some concern that they drafted a lot of guys who don't have a ton of innings under their belt. Santucci and their third round pick, Nate Dome, have dealt with injuries. Their ninth round pick, who I liked, Jackson Jelkin, had Tommy John this year. So there's some concern that maybe they don't have a lot of guys who have a ton of experience in innings. But it's also a chance for these guys to get kind of like a restart, and start fresh in a new organization with pro coaches and a good system. So I think they had a really solid draft, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this class really develops, and supplements what's been a pretty exciting year for the Mets, both at the major league level and in the minors. As for the Yankees, I think this, for a lot of people, this was kind of like a head scratcher draft for people. I personally, I kind of understood. I feel like I understood what they were trying to do. You look at their first round pick, Ben Hess, and you see, he's got what was it, like a ERA over 5 or whatever, and then you go to their second round pick, third round picks, same thing, over ERAs over 4, over 5, and you're like, oh man, what are they seeing? But you look into the physical traits, Ben Hess, Cunningham, the second round pick, and Thatcher Hurd. Those are all 6'4", 6'5", 230 plus pound guys. Have they had the success people expected? No, but there's a lot to work with there, and especially with Hess, I think there's just phenomenal fastball pitch data. Pairs it with a really good curve. It's going to be about ironing out some things and getting these guys consistent and healthy. I think what was it, their first 7 picks or something were pitchers. I think that was obviously something that they planned on doing. They sent out a lot of pitching the last couple of years between trades or losing guys to the Rule 5 draft. So really restocking that pitching depth, I think it was a major focus for them, and I think they did a really good job with it. A guy like Thatcher Hurd was potential first rounder going into the year. So getting him in the third is a great pick. I mean, the guy they took in the 5th round, Grayson Carter, I saw in the fall. They played a scrimmage against Rutgers. He hit 101 for me, and he's really hard to square up. I don't know. I like what they did. Some people may have other opinions on that, but I see what they're trying to do. And Yankees at this point have a pretty good track record with developing pitching at this point and getting the most out of guys. So I don't think you can fault them for taking that approach this year. Who was it? The Blue Jays, you also?
Yeah, Blue Jays.
Oh, sure. So yeah, moving on to the Blue Jays. I think it really starts, obviously, first rounder. They got Trey Savage at 20th overall. I'm trying to think where we had him. We had him ranked pretty high. I want to say, let me see. We had him 9th overall. And I think most people expected him to get taken in that 9 to 15 round range overall, 9 15th overall. And he dropped to 20 And I'm sure Blue Jays were thrilled. They probably weren't expecting that, coming into this draft. And he did have a medical issue, where I believe he had like a collapsed lung or something. So that's probably a factor why he dropped a little bit. But it wasn't, assuming he's healthy and safe and everything. There wasn't any baseball related injury. It wasn't like an elbow or shoulder. So if that's cleared away and he's healthy, you got a guy who we felt was one of the top pitchers in this draft. He'll show you 3+ pitches. He's up to mid 90s. He throws strikes. Great size. So like you get that guy at 20th overall. I mean that's a home run if I'm Blue Jays. And just looking at the rest of the draft, they got guys like Kyle Steffen, Kyle Steven, who was at Mississippi State, who really had a breakout year. I think his stuff is going to play at the next level. The one guy I really liked, they took Sean Keys. I actually saw him a couple times this spring. He went to Bucknell in Pennsylvania, and he's somebody that he's just a really polished hitter. Hits for power, doesn't has really good swing decisions where he's controlling the strike zone, really good plate discipline. Doesn't need to really sell out to get to that power. It's pretty simple swing, natural, and he's a track record of hitting, not just at Bucknell, which is obviously a smaller program, but he's played great in the Cape Cod League. Probably a first baseman at the next level, but I mean, I think that was a really good pick, and I think that's gonna, kind of like an underrated pick for them. Somebody that probably didn't have a lot of attention of a lot of the, other bats in this class, but someone who I think you feel pretty good about that you're going to get a major leaguer. And yeah, I mean, I usually come away pretty impressed with what the Blue Jays do on a yearly basis. I think they are good at finding really good like hidden arms and pitchers, and I think they did that for sure this year. The other guys, Jackson Wentworth was somebody I saw. He had a really breakout year. It seemed like they took a lot of guys who really had, not only a lot of good scouting traits, but actually performed at a high level too. So I think Blue Jays fans will be happy with the draft haul they had this year.
My next question is which player or players in rounds 3 to 7 more stood out to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I have to say I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. So I was really surprised they were able to get. They didn't have they didn't have a second or third round pick this year. The Giants, they signed Blake Snell and Matt Chapman, so they had to give those picks up. So after the first round, they had to wait like almost over 100 picks the next time that they got to choose a player. And they took a guy from Mississippi State, Dakota Jordan, who, I mean, is probably one of the more tooled up players in the college class, and someone who, hit 20 home runs in the SEC this year. Great athlete, incredible power. It's some of the best exit velocity numbers in the college class this year. We'll show you, really, plus level, like straight line speed. Doesn't always translate to baseball field. I think that's kind of one of the knocks on him is, he's a little bit raw around the edges as a baseball player. He's, has all the physical tools. He was like that coming out of high school, but then, he performed right away at Mississippi State last year, which I think a lot of people were surprised and impressed at. And he continued it this year as well. And he was a draft eligible sophomore, so he's not as experienced as some of these guys. So, it gives you a little bit more room to, maybe work with and develop some more tools. And a team like the Giants, who didn't have those earlier picks, I think they got somebody who you could look at and say, oh, this was a second round talent. We had him. I think we had him ranked 38th overall. So that's like, early second rounder they got in the 4th round. It's a risk, certainly. A lot of swings and misses at the plate, some pitch ID, pitch recognition issues, but from tools and tools perspective and physical perspective, I think you just don't find guys like that in the fourth round. So I thought that was probably one of the bigger surprises that he lasted that long, and the Giants decided to pull the trigger. So we'll see what the type of bonus he receives. That could change what the Giants are able to do later in the draft. But I think that was probably the biggest surprise from that 3 to 7 round range was that Dakota Jordan pick.
Which selections in the first 2 rounds do you think could be a sleeper pick?
Well, I don't think there's too many, true sleeper picks. That early, first or second round, you're going to be a highly, scouted guy, or teams are doing their due diligence on you, and most of these guys, at least for a lot of people following the draft, these are household names at this point. But for other fans out there, might not follow the draft and are trying to figure out, which guys should I pay attention to. I'm going to stick to a guy in my area. I'm from New Jersey, and the Nationals took a shortstop. His name is Luke Dickerson. He went to Morris Knolls High School in New Jersey. He's committed to Virginia, and he got a lot of buzz. As we got closer to the draft, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this guy's he's a riser. He's like, they call it, having helium when you rise up in the draft, during the spring." And it's funny because I remember talking to some area scouts and stuff early on, and they all knew this was the guy. Like this was the guy as far as hitters go up here. And they knew that early on, and uh, a lot of some of these high school guys, especially from the Northeast cold weather areas, they can fly under the radar on a national level. But I think for him, people were well aware how good he was. The people who saw him, I saw him a couple times this spring, and I saw him last year as well. And the first time I saw him this spring, I was like, "Whoa! Like this guy got strong. Like he put on a lot of good weight, muscular, physical. He hit 3 balls on the screws, line drives. Just really the swing really improved a lot in the last year. And he's there's he's not a big guy. He's only 6 foot 190, but really physical. I think he has a lot of some serious power upside. It'll also show you 70 grade run speed at times. So it's pretty tooled up kid, and I thought that was a really really good pick by the Nationals, and somebody who a lot other fans might not be fully familiar with. But yeah, I think he has a ton of upside, and the question with him is where does he get to play? The arm was a little questionable at shortstop when I saw him, but there's a lot of people who've turned him in, scouts in the area turned him in as a center fielder. He certainly has the speed for it, and I think that's going to be an interesting thing to track. But I give a lot of props to the Nationals. I think that was a great pick, and someone Nashville fans should be watching closely over the next few years.
My next question is, what are your thoughts on David Ortiz's son getting selected to the Red Sox?
I mean, it's a great story. Fans may not know this, but most teams have what they we'll call them courtesy picks, where you'll draft somebody's a family member, or just somebody who has a connection to the organization as a courtesy to that to whoever it is in the organization. So most teams do this. They usually do it the last few rounds of the draft, like we saw with Ortiz. And most of the time these courtesy type picks aren't big prospects. Most of the time they're organizational depth pieces, guys that are good to have around and have experience with around pro level baseball. Certainly Ortiz's son has that. So I don't expect him to be a big prospect for the Red Sox or anything, but I think late in the draft, why not? It's a good story, and who knows, sometimes these guys turn into something, surprise you. And I think it's good for the game too. You get some extra eyeballs on the draft and some interest in what's going on during All-Star weekend and all that, also the All-Star showcases and all that. So I didn't have a problem with it or anything. I don't think he's somebody that you have to follow super closely by any means, but it was a cool moment. Absolutely.
I I saw there were a couple of Division 3 prospects that got selected in this year's draft. Got any good thoughts on the selections?
I'm not familiar with a lot of the D3 guys. It can be difficult to get information on these guys. A lot of the area scouts, these are players that they know they can kind of hide from the public, from other scouts, and maybe there's somebody who's really good in D3, and you know they're the guy that drafts when they turn into something. That's a huge win. So I'm not familiar with all of them. But there were a couple. There was one kid from New York State, Nolan Sparks, went to Rochester or University of Rochester, and he was somebody. Had a great. He was on the Cape Cod League last year. Had a pretty good performance there. So I think that put him on a lot of people's radars going into this year. We'll touch the mid 90s. He's a little undersized. Strikes throwing was a little questionable. But what is it? Third day of the draft. I think that's somebody you take and you say, oh, maybe with some pro level instruction, with we could turn him into a solid reliever or something like that. He was committed to Boston College. Um, you know, he's obviously not going there now, but yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool pick. Somebody who at the very least that I was familiar with and heard a lot about. So we'll see with that one. And going back to my Giants, they drafted a third round guy, Hunter Dryden. I went to Whitworth University I believe that's in Washington State. And he was somebody I never heard of. But then he went to the MLB Draft League this summer, and he was pretty good there. He had some really good starts. He had like a a star where it was like 6 innings, shutout innings. Final fastball was up to 95. He's another guy. He's a little older. He's already 22. He's only like 5'11", but definitely something there. Thought that was for day 3 of the draft, an interesting pick, and again, someone maybe to turn into a reliever. Most likely, it's just good to see D3 guys, getting some attention. So much of the focus is on the Division 1 class, the high level high schoolers, the SEC, the ACC. So anytime you see a guy like that get taken, you got to feel pretty good about it, and we'll see what happens.
I have two more questions.
Sure.
My second to last one is, what are your thoughts on the players that got selected from the Trenton Thunder?
Which I'm not even familiar. I saw the Trenton Thunder. That's Trenton's about an hour and a half, 2 hours for me. I went to handful of their games, maybe like 5 or so. So I saw most of that team. I don't know. I can't remember every single guy that got picked off the top of my head, but the one guy that pops up, was outfielder from Canisius, which is up by Buffalo, New York, and he was drafted, I think, 6th round by the Tigers, and he was someone up here who really had a breakout year this spring. Really good runner. He's got a good body. Doesn't has good strike zone awareness. Little power in there. He had some trouble, with facing lefties. He's a left-handed hitter, so it's a little platoon risk in there. But played some, he's playing a lot of right field during the spring. But started getting some time in center. Has the speed for it. I'm sure that's what the Tigers are going to try to do, is develop him as a center fielder. So, as far as the Trenton Thunder, I think that was probably their top guy that was taken there. I know they've a couple kids from St. Joseph's University in Pennsylvania got taken, Ryan Cesarini and Luke Gabrish, and good day. I think, good day three picks. Cesarini, 60, 70 grade runner, broke his hamate bone right before the season. I think that affected his swing a little bit. So the power wasn't always there, but good runner, good approach at the plate. I'll see what they can develop him as. I think that was a Guardians pick, and then Gabrish, always had great stuff, but never really put it together out of the bullpen for St. Joseph's. Then he went to the draft league and he was lights out, and he was throwing a lot more strikes. Started, is really starting to like fine tune the pitch shape on his sinker, throwing some good sliders. So that's a guy who the arrow's pointing up, for him. Things, maybe he unlocked something, maybe figured something out. I believe that was a Phillies pick in the 15th round. So another guy for the Phillies they can kind of track. And stuff has always been there. So, maybe he's on the brink of breaking out at the next level. So, nice pick there for the Phillies. And yeah, another Trenton Thunder guy.
What are your thoughts on the undrafted free agents pickups for the teams I mentioned earlier?
Um, it's going to be interesting, like, with a lot of the undrafted free agents. They cut down the draft to 20 rounds a couple years ago. They also cut down the amount of players you can have in your organization overall. So, there's not a ton of room for these guys anymore. And a lot of these guys who are signed as undrafted free agents don't get a whole, big window to, show off how good they are, or perform. So it's a short leash for some of these guys, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. The Phillies, I know they signed a guy, Zach Tukis. He was in the draft league as well. It's a right-hander out of a D2 school, Millersville in Pennsylvania. That conference, by the way, that they play in, PSAC, it's really, really good D2 conference, and there's always guys getting drafted out of there. He's another guy, pitched the draft league. He was up to I think like 97, so it's like plenty of velocity. So I thought that was an interesting pick, or interesting signing after the draft. Mets, I think the Mets drafted a bunch or signed a bunch of pitchers so far, like 3 or 4 pitchers, and all of them for the most part throw pretty damn hard. They're all in the mid 90s. One guy they signed was Hunter Hodges at a TCU, and he was somebody that we actually liked at Prospects Live, a year or two ago, and kind of never really developed. It's got like really interesting like pitch data metrics. Just hasn't really shown up results in games, but high spin rates, really interesting all secondary stuff. So I think that's a good one to keep an eye on. As far as the Yankees, they had a couple guys. One guy, Tony Rossi, he went to Charlotte. He's a right-handed pitcher. I think he's like 24 already, so he's quite old. So again, like as I was saying, these guys don't have a long leash, don't have a lot of time to develop. So we'll see what happens. But he's another guy, upper 90s fastball. Will show really a hard slider. So could be a bullpen piece. And then they also signed a kid who I saw this spring, Cole Safiro, out of Penn. He's been a mainstay starter in their weekend rotation. Interesting fastball traits, kind of funky delivery. We'll show you a good changeup, and spin the breaking ball a little bit. Probably needs to get a little bit stronger physically, but he was a grad commit to Wake Forest, which is one of the best, one of the better pitching development schools out there. So obviously, they saw something in him, and the Yankees did as well. For Toronto, the one guy that was interesting to me, they signed a catcher out of Tennessee Tech, Hayden Gilliland. And what stood out with him is that he has a really, really high contact rate. Like, I think I can pull it up. I don't have it here in front of me, but it was like he had more walks and strikeouts. His swing and miss rate was really low. Has a little bit of pop in there, but interesting. You get a catcher who gets the bat on the ball and get him in as an undrafted guy. Maybe it turns into some, solid backup, someone you can put out there who's not going to, swing and miss a bunch and, uh, just be a dependable backup. We'll see with that one. But yeah, as far as undrafted guys, those were ones that stuck out for me.
I appreciate you coming on and talking about the draft, and I'll definitely have you back on as the year progresses, uh, and just when the Cards baseball season hits again, I'll definitely reach out to you.
All right, it sounds good. Thanks for having me on. It was good to finally talk to you, and wish you the best moving forward. Thanks, man.
Thank you.